Story 1. Went to pick up my Xbox 360 a friend was borrowing, and our whole group of friends was there. They had spent the entire day playing games with snacks and pizza, and I had not been invited. And now I was in the situation of being the person who takes the ball home and ruins the fun for everyone. I took my Xbox and never spoke to anyone in that group again. Story 2. Back in my first year of college, I used to have a group of friends, including 7 guys with me included. We always hung out together, and we used to have this group chat where we discussed anything from class subjects to random things. After a year, I noticed that one of the guys, let's just call him Randy, kept getting excluded, not invited, or informed about group hangouts while they talked behind his back. The unofficial leader of the group actually made a whole new group chat, inviting everyone, myself included, except Randy without his knowledge. I know what it feels like to be left out. I experienced that in middle school, and it's really awful. I stopped hanging out with them and started hanging out with Randy. He's quite eccentric, but a very good person at heart. We've been friends for more than 6 years, and he still has my back. Story 3. When I was babysitting her kids, things were going great. We would hang out all the time, have movie nights, and just talk and relax. But the second she no longer needed a babysitter was the second I got kicked to the curb. No explanation, not even a text back. Some people will act like your best friend until they no longer need you. They're lost, though. Story 4. When I was in school, all my friends and I did different A-levels. Despite us all having different lessons from each other, they would wait for each other to go to lunch together, but they would always forget me. Like I'd come out, and they wouldn't be there, so I'd have lunch by myself. And then they'd come back and tell me they thought I was with them. I was the only one they didn't wait for. I've only seen one of them since we left school. She had forgotten my name, so that sucked. Story 5. When I returned to work after being off for 3 months due to an injury, I practically begged them to go grab a beer and do pub trivia, but all 3 of them passed because they had plans. Well, it turns out their plans were to go grab a beer and do pub trivia without me. I found out through social media and deleted it shortly afterward. I've been a lot less depressed about things since I've deleted social media and stopped looking at them as friends and just as work acquaintances. It took that for me to realize that the friendships were really one-sided, and I'm better off not pursuing anything other than being cordial at work. Story 6. When I traded in my truck for a smaller, more eco-friendly vehicle, communication plummeted. Now that I can't haul furniture around, assist with moving as much, or dispose of garbage, etc. Story 7. I was invited to the bachelorette party for one of the friends in this group. While at the party, I figured out that I was the only person not invited to the wedding. I had been invited to the party because they needed another person to contribute to expenses. Story 8. When I went through a divorce and was down to $700, it was the most difficult period. I weeded out all those who pretended to be my friends only for my generosity because I was well settled. I started over and now have 2 truly good friends. Thank you all for your well wishes and wisdom-filled comments. It's incredible how sometimes you get more support and well wishes from strangers than from people who led you to believe they were your well-wishers. Story 9. I flew out to support a friend going through a messy divorce. While I was there, she left me in the apartment to meet up with her boyfriend that I didn't know about. He turned out to have just been released from prison for manslaughter. Once she told me that, I told her that I didn't want to spend time with him, especially considering the circumstances of my visit. The next night, I woke up in the middle of the night to find him in the living room. She said that she thought it wouldn't matter since I was asleep. The next day, she invited her soon-to-be ex-husband over without telling me, and then asked me to mediate their conversation once he got there. That conversation turned ugly fast, and she ended up storming out. He broke down and asked if I thought it was salvageable, and I told him that she had already moved on. Maybe not the best idea on my part, but at that point, she had shown me how vile of a person she is. Story 10. One friend stopped replying to my texts right after we graduated from college, like the same week we graduated. So, I was pretty much just a study buddy that they kept close to help them. Story 11. The group made plans to meet and hang out. I was getting ready in the living room. A couple of friends had to back out for some reason. Another friend then made excuses of his own, and I could tell. I tried cajoling him and offered ways for him to go, but he basically decided to cancel the entire group meetup. It was my birthday. Story 12. I wouldn't say I have fake friends, but I am definitely the periphery friend. The majority of the time, if there aren't enough tickets or space in the car for everyone to do something, I'm the one who gets cut out. It doesn't bother me much, but I wish they would be more mindful when talking to me about things we have done. Remember when we went to see that movie? Wasn't that fun? Well, no, because I wasn't invited. In those situations, it usually gets awkward, or they say, "Hey, we would have invited you if we had the tickets, space, and so on." Story 13. My so-called friends invited me to a party, and then at the last moment, they texted the group that no one is coming and the party is canceled. Well, they had the party that day. Everyone went there. They just decided they did not want me there because I was boring and not a fun person. So they told me that there was no party happening. It hurt a lot. It was a terrible day for me. Story 14. This was quite a few years ago. My ex and I were really friendly with another couple. We did a lot of things together. Then they moved not far, and shortly after, my ex and I separated. They hung out with me for a few months, but then stopped calling. A few years later, I ran into both of them at a race, an ultramarathon, and they both pretended like they didn't know me. That was actually a really painful moment. Story 15. This friend, I'll call her Mary, had kids the same age as mine. We got together for playdates pretty often, and our kids would sleep over at each other's houses for weekends. I liked Mary. We would often visit and talk while our kids were playing. One weekend, her kids had stayed at my house. The older one called her mom to see when she was coming to pick her up. I was in the room, and the kid put the phone on speaker for some reason. Mary told the kid what time she would be there and added, "You had better be waiting outside. If I have to go in and spend the next hour talking to River Tam, I'm going to be really annoyed." We didn't spend much time together after that. I'm getting a lot of similar questions and comments, so I'll add an explanation here instead of writing the same answer multiple times. Did I overreact? Was Mary just having a bad day and not want to talk? And my personal favorite, River Tam, maybe you're just difficult to be around? Here's what happened after I overheard my friend say that to her child. I simply stopped initiating contact and wasn't as available to do things for her. When we dropped off or picked up the kids, I smiled and waved. I let the kids make the plans for playdates. I no longer had time to help her with her garden or watch her kids while she went out with another friend. They were into long-distance running, which is not my preference. She never contacted me unless she wanted something. This had always been true, but I had not realized it. The friendship eventually fizzled out on its own. So, I guess it had never been much of a friendship to begin with. I just didn't realize it until she opened my eyes. Story 16. When you lose your worth to them. For instance, you are going through a dark period in your life, then they just leave like you are a worthless bag of dust. Story 17. I was at a party, really depressed after a bad breakup and got drunk. My abusive ex showed up, caught me somewhere alone and hit me. I begged several friends for help since I was too drunk to drive home alone, and they ignored me. My ex-best friend was there, completely sober, and refused to drive home with me because she didn't believe he would do that. There is no Uber or anything in my country, by the way. The whole thing escalated. One guy I didn't know ended up finding me alone in a field crying and throwing up. He brought me back to the house, built a bed out of blankets for me, and sat guard all night to make sure my ex wouldn't do anything again. Story 18. When you try to open up and share a genuine conversation about something happening in your life, and all they can do is crack jokes and try to get you to go out drinking with them, it makes you realize how surface level many friendships really are. Then you have the opposite of that. 3 guys I've known since I was a freshman in high school. We've been friends for over 15 years. We've stayed in touch through all of us getting married, having kids, and moving to completely separate areas of the country. Yet whenever we're within an hour of each other, we always make a point to get breakfast and catch up. This usually turns into conversations lasting over 3 hours. This may only happen once or twice a year, but I consider those guys my best friends. That's real friendship, and I'm fortunate to have them. Story 19. When I got sober, 7 months today. I always promised myself I wouldn't edit to say thank you, but here we are. Thank you for all the love and kind words. It's brought several tears to my eyes. Story 20. Like I suspect for a lot of people, getting divorced was a real eye-opener. I started with a core group of close friends we had all met in our late teens or early 20s, and one of them introduced me to the woman who I would ultimately marry. Well into our 40s, they were what I considered to be my family. But when the divorce happened, things spiraled. My best friend stuck with me, but his wife was the one who orchestrated things in our group, and she was best friends with my ex. I was expecting the two of them to insulate for a while, and I knew it was painful for my ex to be around me, so it was no surprise when I stopped getting invitations to cookouts. But then I noticed that the other members of the group were also avoiding or ignoring me. I'd see on Facebook that one of them came into my town to go to a concert for a band they knew I liked and hadn't so much as texted. Birthdays rolled around, and nobody would call. When my parents both died within a few months of each other and not one of them reached out, I knew where I stood. My best friend needs to get credit, though. Alone from all of them, he made a consistent effort to stay in touch and see me regularly. He was there when my parents died and through everything else, even though his wife clearly disapproved. I think finally, after this nonsense had been going on for several years, he told her how ridiculous it all seemed, and that entire friend group tried to reconcile. I made it clear right from the start that there was no guarantee that I'd ever find space for them in my life again. This is all very relevant right now because they are having their first big post-COVID-19 party in a couple of weeks, and I'm invited. People are coming in from all over the country, and the only one I care about seeing is my buddy. Story 21. When they abandoned me during a rough time, after I spent years listening and supporting them, I experienced my first moment where I was not coping and needed support, yet they were nowhere to be seen and speaking poorly behind my back. This was when I realized my high school friends had never grown beyond high school. Luckily, I had other friends, just not a large group like that. I can truly say that every friend I have is someone I know has my back and won't judge me if I am not always happy. The same goes for me. I have always had very high expectations of myself as a friend, and I feel that everyone I call a friend brings something special to my life. That is worth more than having a huge group of unkind girlfriends who betray each other when they are out of the room. Took me a long time to realize this, though. Story 22. When I realized that just being in the same room as that person made me miserable, it was because the person was extremely self-conscious to the point that they would overcompensate by putting others down every little chance they had to make themselves feel superior. I kept wondering why they would keep throwing me under the bus for no reason. We had been friends for years. Why would they treat me like this? It took me years to figure out exactly how bad of a friend they were, no matter how hard they pretended not to be. It took me an entire year of ghosting to stop being friends with that person because they loved putting me down so much. They wouldn't stop calling me, texting me, and trying to contact me for a year with no responses because they could not understand how someone could possibly want to stop hanging out with them because they are so perfect. Story 23. One friend at university tried to steal my animation coursework, claim it as his own, and get me expelled for stealing his work. However, I had helped setting things up by one of my professors who helped me film the coursework. As a result, he was expelled and blacklisted from the university and any other university in the UK offering the same subject. The people running all the animation degrees in every UK university at that time knew each other and communicated regularly, as it was a small community. I think there were less than half a dozen universities offering animation degrees back then. This was about 20 years ago. Story 24. My friends made a Facebook account for a fake girl who was transferring to our school and completely catfished me, only revealing it was a scam when I arrived at a movie theater to meet her. Was I dumb? Yes. Were they terrible? Undoubtedly. Story 25. My best friend of 10 years called on my wedding day to say she couldn't make it because she was just so sad about her recent divorce. Turns out she just had a date. Our whole friendship was fake. It just took me until that point to realize it. Story 26. For me, it was when I got into some deep trouble and they all just cast me aside without even giving it a second thought. I realized this when I invited all of them to go to the movies with me and they all said they couldn't go. I then found out through one of them that they went to see that movie the same day. When I asked them why they didn't tell me they were going, they said, "We just wanted to go together." It broke my heart. Story 27. I stopped smoking weed and they stopped coming around. Edit. That's a lot of upvotes. I'm sorry so many of you seem to have had similar experiences. You'll make new friends if you haven't already. To the people saying there's nothing wrong with this, I'd like to respectfully disagree. These were people I considered close friends. It wasn't just some guys and girls I shared a hobby with. Please don't be so quick to judge when you have very little context.